so I then went and spoke to Mr. Zoccoli, who owns a restaurant on Pacific
Yes.
Avenue. And I love opera. Oh, this is so wonderful.
Good for you.
So I went up and down and spoke to a lot of shop owners who had restaurants, especially because when the opera breaks at an intermission, it's lunchtime. And every downtown business that could cater to this in such a wonderful way. And I already have ideas about showing part of your ticket and, maybe saving $5 or something, but that's up to
Sure.
them.
Might as well.
It's really good for this town at this particular point to have this culture entity brought forward, because all we hear are, the negative things. And this town has the culture. And those are the people that are showing up. And we've supported museums, and we still continue to.
Well, and you have the university
And
and
the
Cabria with
university,
both
right.
fabulous music programs. And when they start showing English underneath
Yeah,
subtitles,
right.
it makes it easy. We used to have
Right.
to read the libretto before we went to the Metropolitan when I was young in New York and know the story because they were singing it in one of the other
Right.
languages. So.
Well, if it makes you feel any different, I cut high school twice with a friend of mine, and we went to the Old Met, and
Yes.
of course there were no librettos, but it was just to hear the voices.
Yes.
And we stood for $2 each time, and the principal called my parents and was so embarrassed in a way when he found out, yes, I had cut school, and they said, oh no, did she go to the opera? And so we had a funny meeting. It made so many, many years ago in the principal's office. He really couldn't get too angry at me, and my marks were okay. So he said, I guess if she wants to do it again, I'm not going to.
And little did he know you would make a career out of it,
No,
too, at that
never.
point, right?
Well, yes, in a way I had already started.
Oh,
Through a wonderful teacher in a junior high school, I sang my first Gilbert and Sullivan. And I must have been all of 13. And my mother was a pianist, not professional, but she was my
a lot of
piano-
people played piano in those
Yeah.
days, didn't they?
Well,
Not today, but.
The real antique is behind you, and it's the acrosonic that she would play. And so we were rehearsing one day, she and I, some of the songs from Gilbert and Sullivan, when our neighbor, who was new to the 6th floor of our apartment house and had the penthouse, we had not really known her, and she knocked on the door and said, I can't tell you how I feel about the voice that I hear on the other side. Is that a recording? And of course my mother opened the door, and here I am, 13, 14, whatever. And this woman said, I was an opera singer in Vienna, and I've come here with my husband. He is a rug merchant. He brings beautiful imported rugs here. And I would so love to teach your daughter the fundamentals that I was taught.
Because
in
were you
Europe.
singing in English then, or had you already had some language?
Yeah, it was just Gilbert and Sullivan.
Yeah, oh,
In
well,
high
yeah,
school,
okay,
I went
of
on
course
to
then, right.
other things, but never opera in school. No,
Yeah.
they just didn't have the wherewithal. But she was all opera.
Yeah.
And so after 6 months of me studying and my mother waiting outside almost with a glass at the door, I swear, she never heard me singing. And she finally knocked on the door one day during a lesson, and she said, Mrs. Fleischman, I don't quite understand. Do you have Bonnie in another room? I don't hear her. And, I thought I'd hear her in the hall like you heard her. She said, oh, she's not ready to sing yet. She's just working on her diaphragm. And my mother then found me on the floor with telephone books on my diaphragm and a candle on the top of those books. And this was all blowing out the candle. This is the old-fashioned way, and teaching what is known as head voice, meaning that the voice does not come from your chest. Unless you have 6 microphones all around you, then you can almost whisper into anything. The voice should come up the right way and you should be able to sing with a smile on your face because that's where your voice is coming from. This wonderful woman, at that point, my father was not doing well financially, and we didn't know exactly how I was going to go to where I really thought I should go, which was Oberlin, without getting a scholarship. So my teacher said, well, I want you to go to a school here, and I'm going to go to the interview with you, and you're going to ask for a scholarship.
Okay.
So we had prepared for Juilliard. Preparation was very simple. You had to have an old American classic, and you had to have, so mine was Beautiful Dreamer, I remember that, and then you had a choice of either singing an aria or whatever. And I got in, and I got a full scholarship, so
Wonderful.
it was very exciting.
What was your first professional performance? I know you were in a number of shows on Broadway.
Right, right. Well, going to Juilliard in itself was a challenge.
Sure.
But my teacher took a vacation. And I had been complaining to my original teacher that every time I left Miss Piper's room after a formal vocal lesson, I was hoarse.
Oh,
There is no way, if you're singing properly, this
Yes.
can happen.
yes.
So she was getting concerned and getting ready to come up to the school to approach them about maybe looking into this. And not that my mother was not a spokesman too. She was in on a lot of things, but between the two of them, they could conjure up a pretty good deal. So all of a sudden, Miss Piper's on vacation, and I don't have her class. I had a few friends that had gone they went to performing arts high school, and we had become friendly through meetings between the schools and all this. And a couple of them had broken away to Broadway. And I say broken away. They found out that opera was probably not going to be the thing that was going to give them the thrill. So I was always buying variety. I just like to bring it into Miss Piper's room, I think, just to give her a little, when I was not feeling so good about her. I was quite young, so that was a joke to me. But I did see that there were a bunch of auditions, and they call them, before you get into equity, open auditions, where there can be 500 people showing up. And I decided, and my father went with me, which is interesting. He attended almost all my auditions with me.
Good.
And he was always there for me. And well, here I am, and she's away, and I get called back, and I get invited to come into Happy Hunting with Ethel Merman.
Ethel Merman, oh.
And my family, I can't say they were disappointed, because this was so exciting to be on Broadway for them, that they weren't even upset about the opera part of it, which I thought...
That you had left opera.
Well, I didn't
No,
really leave.
no, of course.
I continued at Juilliard, even when I was working. I continued, and I got a BA at Juilliard.
Good.
And so Juilliard was always closed during the summers, so, like most schools are. So even while I was in Juilliard, unbeknownst to Miss Piper or any of them, I had gone to three, actually, summer stop theaters that I got into. So that was a good training ground for me. I got actually to play 3 leads because I was a substitute. I was the youngest in every cast, and everybody took very good care of me because I was away from home. My first place was Rhode Island, and we just Zero Mostel worked there, and oh my goodness, some of the most incredible people that have passed through my life, whether I was in the chorus and then finally made it to the first chance that I had to be a substitute who got on. I worked with Yul Brynner. I worked with, I was in many, many shows.
Good.
Oklahoma. Then I worked for the City Center Opera Company, which was more like an operetta. and they put on the Oklahomas, and they put on the other musicals. So that was the beginning, and of course the wonderful beginning of being in a Merman show for a person that is young and learning.
Yes.
This woman would come on every night as though it were taped, never varied from any theme, with 104 fever one night.